This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Welcome to The Commercial Investing Show, where we analyze, explain, and exploit the opportunities presented in today's commercial property marketplace. If you're interested in apartments, mobile home parks, self-storage facilities, and other income property, you've come to the right place. We'll explore what's hot and what's not in markets nationwide in the relentless pursuit of return on investment. Here's your host, Jason Hartman.
It's my pleasure to welcome Ray Hespen to the show. He is co-founder and CEO of Property Meld. Ray, welcome. How you doing?
Hey, Jason, I'm doing quite well. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Well, it's good to have you. So we want to kind of talk about two things in part. We want to talk about some data on renter experience and, how to reduce turnover and such. Then talk about the software solution that you have for that.
If you'd like, I can kind of give you the genesis of kind of the reason we looked into solving the maintenance problem, and that might be able to give some of your viewers some insight into a lot of the times what happens in the renter's mindset.
Yeah, sounds good. Let's do it.
It actually started, I traveled all around through the U.S. I'm actually an engineer by trade and moved around a lot in the United States. I lived in all 4 time zones in about 6 years, and so I rented a lot for obvious reasons. And basically what happened is my co-founder, CTO, had called me one day and asked, is it always painful to be a renter and have maintenance done on a repair? And, it really wasn't a pleasant experience. Every time I tried to reach out, I would phone tag or get phone treed or I'd get calls from odd numbers I didn't know. And it ended up being a very non-transparent process. So that was kind of what first got us into this whole maintenance game to start, is realizing that the resident experience isn't that incredible in a lot of instances. So we talked to quite a few firms and spoke about all the things that had to happen. You kind of understand why the process itself can be a little daunting for most people on how to make a really good, powerful experience for the renter.
What do you do to make that less painful for the tenant? Certainly responding quickly is important, right? But are there any other things that can be done?
One of the biggest things that we've realized, Jason, is speed of repair is paramount. Transparency is right behind that. And you think about what's happening in other industries that the consumer's used to, right? We see what's happening Uber, Lyft. Now we see what's happening with about every pizza ordering service you can get. You see about when they're making it, when it's through the oven, when it's on the way to your house. So we're constantly being inundated with updates of what's happening. And so one of the things that I think that's happening is as the renter is becoming more and more used to this level of service, it's creating a further gap from what may have been the old way of doing things and what needs to happen moving forward. Maybe it would help if I kind of go into the renter and how it's becoming more and more important to them.
Sure, yeah.
The renter of the past really was somebody you couldn't afford a home or you didn't want to buy a home or whatever. And now we're seeing this massive shift, right, in the last, 5, 7, you even go back to 08, 09, what happened after that. You have a lot of people seeing families lose their homes and they don't want to take on the burden. And so renting is becoming a choice for a consumer as opposed to an absolute. So you're increasing the pool, but you're also increasing kind of the demands that says, hey, I'm renting because I don't want to have to deal with homeowner stuff in conjunction with that. So it's very interesting. We're seeing it with trends as they go, but non-renewals are a pretty big deal for investors because you have a resident non-renew their lease. And what does that mean you got to do?
Oh, you got to make ready, and it gets expensive.
You got to make ready.
Sure.
It's expensive and lost revenue. And there's now data that says that nearly a third of non-renewals are driven by poor maintenance experience, which is big money. And that's a controllable process, right? And the amount of renewals that do cite maintenance as being a primary driver is nearly half. It's pretty significant in terms of impacting the bottom line. And I mean, again, if you kind of just look at it from the sake of who your renter is today versus who they were 10 years ago, you start having an understanding as to why.
Okay, so talk about who that renter is a little bit. A lot of our investors are they're aware that the renter profile has changed significantly. A lot of people doing it by choice. It's not surprising that millennials are renting because they have a mortgage. They just didn't get a house included. It's called a student loan. And that was a pretty raw deal. I think they've wised up to that one, but it'll be with them for 10, 20 years, sadly. And then you've got empty nester baby boomers that oddly are, selling their homes and becoming renters, which is kind of a new thing.
Yeah, and I don't think you could have any conversation about renters anymore without using the M word, right? The millennials. It's funny, I am one. It's this group of people that everybody sits there and goes, "Oh, they love avocado toast." They're into all that.
I'm just ahead of you. I'm a Gen Xer, and your generation is the most catered to generation in human history.
So it's really funny because now I'm realizing I'm starting to say these Gen Zers, man. I'm like, what is wrong with it?
Right, yeah, exactly.
But it's not only that. You nailed a massive one. I think the student loan debt and the impact and what the borrowing capability is of somebody that's got, $50,000 to $100,000 of no collateral liability is a big one. The other thing is, you have a little bit more of a transient population, but millennials by and large are driving this market. I think I've seen somewhere, I think Zillow releases their, report annually. And this last one, the 18 to 34 segment or somewhere around there, home ownership percentage for them is dropped like a rock. Whereas normally as you get to be, closer to that 34 mark, these renters start to transition into houses, and it's not happening. It's really good for investors, but it's showing you why it's such a growing market. But, the transient thing is a big thing too. A lot of these people move jobs and they transfer more than they have historically as opposed to staying in their hometown.
And any additional thoughts, any kind of like new thoughts on why the population is more transient now than it ever has been? One of the things I've been saying for several years is that geography is less meaningful than it's ever been in human history. It's still meaningful, of course, but it's less meaningful than ever in history. Think about the significance of that. And it's going to get even less meaningful again when we really see autonomous vehicles. That's going to be a game changer.
First of all, I can't wait for autonomous vehicles.
Me neither.
I'll live an hour outside of town where nobody can find me and just work on my drive-in. But
you can eat your avocado toast as the car's driving.
Yeah, on my way. Yeah. So I would say I'm a pretty good anecdotal example of it. A lot of the driver for me was vertical mobility. Right? When it becomes less concerning to stay home and stay around your hometown. I grew up in a small town in Wyoming called Gillette. Wasn't a ton of opportunity there. Where I went to school, same thing. And so that's why I lived in 4 time zones. I lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I was in California, Chicago, Baltimore, Denver. And I moved in a pretty short period of time. And I don't think, I'm alone in that thinking. It's almost like this itch that people need to scratch anymore. That, like you said, you're no longer in a landlocked environment. It's becoming very, very common. And I would even say too, the ability to search for jobs online seems like not that big a deal, but now it's the norm, right? So where I can sit there and say, I do want to go live in this area, and I can easily find that.
It broadens your horizons. It gives you a lot more options. Yeah.
No more searching through the classifieds.
Exactly. Yeah. I remember years ago when we started investing nationwide, we would subscribe to newspapers in other cities. It's not like we didn't. It's not like we didn't have the internet then. We did, but it just every day becomes more and more impactful. Of course, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, so society is more transient, more portable than ever. Geography is less meaningful than ever. The best thing you can have on a resume is mobility, being able to move to where the jobs are. You can keep in touch with your friends all around the world quite easily nowadays. So that's all changed and made the population more transient, which means more renters. Any other factors you want to share?
I think you nailed it on the head with a lot of that. I think that's the big driver. And especially if, you don't have anything holding you home, it makes it really easy to move. So
yeah. Okay, good. Okay, so tenant turnover and not keeping your renters, not having longevity with your tenants, you say that one of the biggest drivers of that is maintenance headaches for them, right? When they complain that the landlord doesn't maintain the property well and doesn't respond fast enough, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Speed is it. So I'll tell you, we analyze, hundreds of thousands of service issues. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, on our platform, we, I think the last time we checked, we get about a 36% feedback mm-hmm. on service issues. So that means 36% of service issues completed, we get somebody to give us a rating or give the property management firm a rating on how the service was. Mm-hmm. And over hundreds of thousands, we realized that the thing that's got the strongest correlation of anything, you take region, category, everything out of it, is speed of repair. Mm-hmm. Like not closing out an issue in your accounting system, but literally the time they make the call or submit online to it being done and their issue being rectified. Mm-hmm. It's the strongest correlation you can get. I can tell you even more specifically, most people, after you pass about 3.5 days on a service issue, it gets pretty detrimental to your satisfaction surveys. Mm-hmm. Okay. So much so that on like HVAC repairs, if it's after 3.5 days, you have a very, very small sliver of a chance of even getting a positive experience. Right. Plumbing issue, you have around 4.5 days. Electrical, you have 5. But there's a certain point where it doesn't matter. Okay.
Your clients are typically occupants, they're managers and owners of multi-unit apartment complexes. So these are apartment occupants that are being surveyed, right? Mm-hmm. By and large, right? And you have single-family homes too in your system. But tell us how your system works. How does it fix this problem?
So one of the things when we evaluated the process, we realized that the person managing the portfolio or, whether it be the building, is playing quarterback a lot of the times. So when we looked at the problem, we said, hey, we need to get this person out of it. We need to connect the renter with the service provider and just keep the middle person up to speed. And that was one of the big components and shifts. So, when somebody submits a service issue through a Property Meld, not only are we, engaging them in text message from there, but they're allowed to submit, communicate, schedule their own time, be reminded when it's happening, notified when it's done, all automatically without the person managing the unit having to get involved. And it works with, it's obviously an intelligent system. It works with the service provider, finding out when they can get out to the unit, works with the resident to do it all without a phone call. The top 3 ways that residents want to be gotten a hold of was text message, email, and a very distant third phone. So we worked really hard to eliminate that communication path. Not only is it not effective, but it's time consuming.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay. Anything else that it does? One of the things I think you should tell people is that it's not a network of contractors and repair maintenance people, right? Everybody just brings their own to the platform and gets them on the platform, gets the tenants on the platform, or does it integrate with the other property management software systems and those portals? Or tell us more about that.
Yeah, so we do have integrations with multiple property management systems that are out on the marketplace, and more popping up every day, which is great. The environment continues to open, which is good. But yeah, it's all entirely web-based. So you're not relying on somebody downloading an app, which is really, really important this day and age. The moment mm-hmm. somebody sits there and goes, hey, can you download this? They're calling.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So it allows all the communication and facilitation within the app itself, heavily based in text messaging, email, and our goal really is to eliminate the phone call. But we do not provide vendors. We work with your own internal technicians and your own vendor service providers that you currently have relationships with.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Anything else you want people to know?
So if you ever want to check out Property Meld, you can definitely check us out, www.propertymeld.com. One of the things that we really bolster, we take pride in, is we reduce the maintenance coordination hours by about 60%. So that means we're doubling and tripling capacity of maintenance coordinators, or it's a time thing, right? Dropping that down. And our standard platform average, because resident experience is so important, it's a 4.3 out of 5 across the system.
Is there any accountability for the maintenance people in terms of, there are some apps that we've talked about on the show that geotag photos of repair items that clock the time they spent on the item, for if you're paying them hourly, et cetera, and sort of keeps those contractors honest, right? Trust but verify, as Reagan said so famously. Any aspects of that or other aspects of the technology you want us to know about, Ray?
One of the biggest KPIs that we tell our clients and we tell the industry to focus on is resident satisfaction for the bottom line impacts I mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. So one of the really cool things is we will actually show you how those vendors and how those technicians are providing service to your firm. All those ratings that you're going to get feedback as somebody who manages properties is going to show you who's giving you the high marks and who's giving you the low marks. Not only sitting there telling you what the residents think, but it'll actually track and trend and show you how long it's taking them to do jobs. So we believe that the person doing the actual work has more impact than about anything else in the system. So we do track and make sure that that's available. We got a whole bunch of other features, clocking in, clocking out, tracking expenditures, submitting invoice, all those sort of things. But the big one is the accountability is what the resident's experience was. Because if they're doing poor experience for the resident, not much else matters because you're going to lose them anyways.
Right. We had a little talk off air before we started today about how, what your sort of current ideal client is and what your plans are for the future. Right now, most of your clients are larger landlords with like 100 doors, but the technology is so beautifully scalable that you can, once you work through that and really get, even more and more data and experience and data points and so forth, take it down market to the smaller investor, right?
Yeah, the reason the 100 doors has become a big deal is because, as I mentioned, is you've got a system that manages a lot of throughput and you have to treat it in a way that's such. Whereas you get smaller, the throughput decreases and the amount of granularity set up, the headache becomes more. But you're right, as we get better at what we do, we can make our clients that manage less units and less units more effective, and that is a goal of ours. Mm-hmm. We want this to be a really powerful tool to help people, even less than 100 doors.
Yeah, right. That's what's great about it. A lot of these technologies that were, formerly only available to large enterprises, you wait a couple of years and it just goes right down to the flattened world, right? Where where everybody can take advantage of it. So good stuff. The website is propertymeld.com. Thank you for joining us, Ray.
Hey, thank you so much, Jason. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.